shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
There are things that we know about the wise men. There are things that we think that we know about the wise men. But quite honestly, the biblical account doesn't give us a whole bunch of details. Probably the most important thing for us to know about the wise men is they came from very far away, which means they were absolutely others. They were foreigners, they were outsiders, and this, as Paul was writing to the Ephesians, is the good news of the gospel. That the gospel wasn't just intended for one little group of people in Israel, but the good news was intended for all people everywhere. So that these foreigners, these outsiders, these completely other people are invited right into the very midst of the story. Now, we don't know how long they've been traveling. Maybe 2 years. We can do that from an account that Herod makes when Herod goes on his massacre. That maybe they've been traveling for 2 whole years. How far have they come? We do not know. We also don't know how many of them there are. Because there are 3 gifts, we've always assigned it to 3 of them. We can also be pretty sure that there were no wise women with them, because there were no casseroles, onesies, or diapers in the gift giving. Bad joke. But it does bring us right to those gifts. Because as we think about the gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, they seem like odd gifts for a newborn baby. And yet, as we think about those gifts, as we unpack the layers of meaning, what we find is those gifts absolutely point to the identity of who this child is. So gold. Gold speaks to Jesus' royalty. But Jesus isn't just a king. Jesus is the King of all kings. Frankincense was used during worship by the priest. It certainly points to Jesus' priestly role, but beyond that, Jesus himself becomes the sacrifice for all time and all people. And finally, the gift of myrrh. Presenting embalming fluids to a newborn child seems incredibly wrong, and yet it is the means, the gate, by which Jesus will become the priest and the sacrifice to become King of all kings. So, spending time with the text this week and spending time with those 3 odd gifts got me to thinking about gifts. Oftentimes, the gifts that we get in life aren't the gifts that we hoped for, asked for, or expected. And so it really landed me to think about a gift I inherited about 18 months ago, and that was the gift of my auntie. Now, of course, my auntie has been my auntie for far more than 18 months, but 18 months ago she took her first fall, and in the emergency room it became clear that memory was becoming a huge problem. And so my auntie, who's lived a very hard life, a life that's filled with broken relationships with spouses, with her children, with her friends, was really left, as she was making plans for her life, with 3 people to invite into that final bit of the journey with her. She chose my mother first, that's her sister. She chose my brother second, and guess who came in third? Because my mother and brother lived up in Portland, and my auntie was living in Salem, my brother said, "Tag, you're it." And with that, my auntie and I became each other's gifts. Now, I want to tell you that background because I want you to understand it was not a close relationship. It was not a dear relationship. It was simply, this was my auntie until 18 months ago. And 18 months ago, when this gift came to me, with it came blessings upon blessings upon blessings. Now, those gifts weren't always pretty, and they weren't always fun, but they were rich. When I first inherited my auntie, it was clear that she really should not be on her own anymore. She had ran out of her finances. She couldn't keep track of her money. She really couldn't keep track of herself very well. But because of her financial situation, she couldn't qualify for any sort of help. So we were in holding mode until one of the first blessings came. And I know as awful as it sounded, that blessing was the next fall. And it was a fall that she lay there for a couple of days before I found her. Awful. What a blessing. Because that fall landed her in care, finally. And the beauty of it was the care was out at Mount Angel, which works out incredibly well since I am her first person. The blessings that came veiled in really hard things. When I found her after that fall, she wasn't particularly rattled, amazingly. But once we got to the emergency room, she became more rattled. And there in the emergency room, the clutter, the hubbub of all that was going around, she asked if I would baptize her. The most basic of baptisms that you can ever think of. And sometimes I feel like I kind of denied her the delight of being baptized in community and for me to have the full liturgy and to have all the words. I didn't have all that. I had water. And I was able to baptize her. And when I baptized her in that emergency room, her countenance came completely down. And the Holy Spirit was there in that place, even though it was a hard situation, was there. And when I got her baptismal certificate, and she hung it on the wall in the care facility, and pointed everybody at it, and then looked at her shout. And for months afterwards, when she still could, loved to come and be in this place with you. She was never, ever a church person until this piece of the journey. Blessings upon blessings upon blessings, but not the gifts that we had asked for or we had expected. Today, Herod gets the same gift that the wise men have. He gets the same good news, and yet the way the wise men accept that news and the way Herod accepts that news couldn't be further apart from each other. The wise men get the gift, and they seek it, maybe for 2 years, in order to worship that newborn king. Herod gets the gift, and he seeks out the baby in order to destroy it. Now, what's the hinge pin here? What's the difference between the way that the wise men hear the good news, accept the gift, and the way Herod does? And the hinge pin is humility. It's that first commandment stuff. God saying, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods. The wise men being willing and desiring to have another God that they are going to go find and seek and worship. Herod, on the other hand, hearing that there is a God being born right there, can only think that he needs to destroy it to preserve his own position. Humility. So, as we think about the ones who went seeking in order to worship versus the one who went seeking in order to destroy, we can really think about how we receive gifts, what we do with those gifts. We can be like Herod, that the gift comes and we accept it in fear and trepidation, or the wise men who received it with faith. Herod, who resists the gift, The wise men who embrace the gift. For Herod, the gift was a threat. For the wise men, it was a promise. As God gives us these gifts, invites us into the good news, we will choose which route. Will the route be me or thee? Which route will you travel? And what will you find as you travel that route? Today we're reminded that the star shines in the darkness. And that star reminds us that God is up to something gloriously wonderful. Amen.
Well,